Video games should be regarded not only as cultural products of a society, but also as immersive vehicles for negotiating identity and exploring the social locations of others. In these reflections, the player is perhaps one step closer to discovering what it means to become human and humanize the other. There's a couple reasons why I wanted to start this clip with this quote. One is it's a quote from one of the readings, one of the scholarly articles that you as a student of this class are going to be reading over the next couple weeks. And another reason is I think this is one quote that really captures the spirit of this course, really captures the ethos of the themes and the points that I want you to explore by taking this class. So, hi everybody. My name is Gabriel Wisnewski-Parks. I know that some of you who are taking this class have taken me in other classes before, so we know each other, and I probably don't know some of you. So, I want to say hi and welcome for those of you who don't know me. My name is Gabriel Wisnewski-Parks. I'm an associate instructor in the communication department. And in this video, I want to talk to you about the class that you are taking this summer, COMM 493 Gaming and Relationships. To give you a background, or to give you a preview of the main ideas I want to go over in this video, I want to tell you first off a little bit about the class, the background of it, who I am, why I decided to create this class, what inspired it. And then I want to go over some of the main questions that I'm trying to ask in this class and that you will be asking and thinking about through the different course readings that I have for you and through the different assignments that you're going to be doing. And then finally, I want to talk to you just a little bit about course logistics. I'll briefly show you the Canvas page just to show you how I have things laid out. And as always, if you have any questions about the class, you can reach out to me. Well, let's go ahead and get into some of the background. So, according to Pew Research Center, 85% of teens in the United States play video games. And within that same study, within that same statistic, almost half of that percentage play every day. And also, according to Pew Research Center, so almost half, 49%, of everybody in the United States, of all people, not just teens, but kids and adults, young and old, play video games. Now, for some of you, this may not come as a surprise because according to this statistic, a lot of you probably play video games. But I think this class, and I hope this class is going to be interesting for all of you who are taking it, whether or not you consider yourself a gamer, whether or not you play video games all the time, or maybe you played them as a kid some, or even if you have never really played video games, it's never really been an interest to you. So another reason for this statistic, though, isn't just to show you that this class is relevant to you, but also how important this topic is for culture. And in fact, that's going to be one of the themes of this class is if we know 85% of teens are playing video games, if we know, which we do, that video games and gaming is a multi-billion dollar industry, right? We know that it's a really important part of culture, both in terms of jobs and the economy, and also, of course, in terms of amusement and entertainment. Why is it that gaming still isn't taken as seriously as other forms of media? So this is a communication and media class, right? And so we're going to be looking at video games from a couple different perspectives. And so this is one important statistic to start off with is so we can kind of contextualize and situate this class and be like, wow, like gaming has really become a big part of culture, but we don't always talk about it that way. So how do we communicate about gaming, this form of media that so many of us are spending a lot of time doing? Okay, so moving on to the next point, what about me? What about my connection? So gaming is relevant to us as a culture. What is my background and experience and relevance to all this? So as I mentioned, I'm an associate instructor in the communication department. Here at Western, I teach a variety of classes. I mostly teach COMM 201, which I know I've had some of you in that class before. So the one required communication class from the university where we do a lot of public speaking and an introduction to the field of comm. I teach some other classes as well. I teach a first year experience, a freshman seminar called COMM 190. And that course is about social media and the history of media. It's called Media Literacy in the Age of Social Media. And then, of course, I have taught this class before, gaming and relationships, and a few other things. So, my interest, my background is in the field of communication, and a lot of my research is on social media, and specifically how social media platforms and influencers shape public discourse. How influencers and social media influences how we talk about important issues, and also how media impacts identity. So, I, to some extent, and probably y'all to a larger extent, because you're a little bit younger than me, a lot of us have grown up on the internet. So, if you grow up on the internet and you're really one of the first generations to have media be so formative for for understanding yourself, for understanding your self concept and your identity and how you see the world and how you see other people. And so that's what a lot of my research and teaching, for example, in COM 190 has been about, has been like, what is it like to grow up on the internet? What is it like to grow up and have social media and content creators and influencers shape your sense of self and how you see other people? And in this class, that's one of the reasons why we're looking at video games specifically. So also related to my background. So as I mentioned, I do have the scholarly background. I have academic publications and they're related to media studies and social media. I'm not necessarily a scholar of video games or game studies per se. I don't have academic publications in that. It's something I've gotten more interested in. But in my personal life, I do play games. Probably not surprising to you if I'm teaching a class about video games, but here's a screenshot of my Steam profile. So I'll just tell you a little bit about my background and personal connection with video games. I played games some as a kid, wasn't a major gamer growing up. I grew up in a family that was somewhat skeptical when it comes to media and the internet and video games. It wasn't a big thing, but I did play some games. And when I got into college, I kind of lost interest in video games for a while, to be honest. I was busy with school, taking school really seriously, and I just had interest in other hobbies, that type of thing. After I graduated college, though, I kind of got back into games and specifically into PC gaming. And so here you can get a little bit of a glimpse at the type of games that I like. So I do like a fairly wide variety of games, but over the past couple years, I've really enjoyed story driven games and also, as you can see, what's often called Souls like games. So games made from software studio and other kind of spin-offs. So Dark Souls, Sekiro, Elden Ring, Lies of P. Lies of P is one of the specific games that we're going to be talking about in this class. And so, yes, I do enjoy gaming both as a solo activity by myself, and I also play sometimes with my wife. And one of the games that we like to play is Baldur's Gate. I wonder if any of you guys like Baldur's Gate or games like that. That's you can kind of see that in the background image of my profile. Those are some characters from Baldur's Gate. And you can also see that my profile picture is Kratos from God of War, Ragnarok specifically, another game we're going to be looking at. And then framing, kind of looking at Kratos, is Ellie from The Last of Us, another game that we're going to be looking at. So I have that professional background studying and teaching communication and media, and I also really love video games. I really enjoy playing them, both for fun as a way to pass the time, as a form of escapism, and also as something that I think we can analyze and think about how it, as a medium, shapes society and shapes who we are. Let me give you a little bit more of the background and inspiration behind this class. I realized a couple years ago, like I said, I was kind of getting back into playing different games, and a few games that I was playing were really sticking out to me. And one thing that I noticed was that I was playing a lot of games that involved the theme of apocalypse. or the end of the world. So some form of the end of the world or an apocalypse was built into the story or the themes or an essential part of it. That's what I have this image representing, the apocalypse. So, for example, I was playing games like The Last of Us, God of War Ragnarok, and It Takes Two. So each of these games, I realized, and a few others as well, but these games specifically, I was like, it's interesting that each of these is incorporating some version of an apocalypse, some version of the end of the world. So for those of you who don't know the way that works in these games, and these are three that we're going to be looking at, with The Last of Us, for example, it's basically a zombie apocalypse that's caused by it is, I believe it's the cordyceps. So it's a mushroom spore in the air. The video game series and then the TV series on HBO present slightly different backgrounds of the virus, but basically what's happened is it's an apocalypse caused by this caused by the cordyceps, the mushrooms getting in the air and infecting people. And so that has basically caused the end of civilization. In God of War Ragnarok, this is a much more, for those of you who don't know, this is a much more fantasy-driven series, and the main character, Kratos, is originally coming from Greece and the Greek pantheon of gods and goddesses, but he has now found himself in Norse mythology, and in Norse mythology, Ragnarok is the end of the world, the apocalypse. Now, this third game, if you know this game, you might be kind of curious. You're like, I don't see how this fits. But this third game, It Takes Two. By the way, all of these are very critically acclaimed games that have won lots of like Game of the Year awards. But I wanted to take a moment just to say those aren't the only types of games worth studying. So while a lot of the games in this class we're looking at are like these big studio, blockbuster, AAA games, right? The huge budgets and they win a ton of awards. They're often really story driven. Lots of other games can still be very meaningful, right? So we could have meaningful cultural analysis of, a grandma playing Candy Crush or Minecraft or whatever, right? Or like random indie games on Steam that only 500 people have played, but you could play it and it changes your life, right? But anyway, It Takes Two is a game premised on a couple. Oh, sorry, the light just went off in my office. So It Takes Two is about a married couple who are they're having relationship problems and they're on the brink of divorce basically. And so a lot of the game is them learning how to navigate conflict and communicate with each other. And so you can kind of see how each of these games brings with it both this thread, this idea of apocalypse or the end of the world, but they're also about relationships, right? So The Last of Us and God of War, very relationship focused, story driven stories. They're both about specifically about parent child relationships. And for me, this was really resonant at this time in my life because I personally was getting ready to become a parent. I was getting ready to become a dad, and I found myself playing these games like God of War and The Last of Us. And I felt like as games, right? Like as the specific medium of a video game, I felt like they were really powerful. Not that other types of mediums can't be, right? A good movie, a good book for kind of like making you think and question, like, well, what does it mean to be a good parent? How do I be a good dad? What does healthy fatherhood or masculinity look like, for example? But I do find that games as a unique immersive medium that really immerse you in an environment and lets you interact with things and make decisions. I find that it's something that can really engage us with some of those questions in a deeper way. And so this was part of the inspiration for this class was also a curiosity that I had, which is both with these examples I've been giving you, but also I think more broadly in our culture and media, I'm interested in how popular dystopian stories have become, right? Different versions of dystopia or the end of the world. And it's curious that I think a lot of times we need some sort of story about the end of the world to be able to imagine a better world, right? Or if we want to imagine using a story to think about like how to make the world a better place or how to have a better relationship with with our significant other or anything like that, we have to enter that through the frame of an apocalypse. And so that is part of the inspiration for this. So let me move on and briefly talk a little bit about some of the guiding questions then. So this is a communication and media class, and communication and media theories are part of what are framing the scholarly grounding of this class. And I also think of this as a philosophical class, so a philosophy of media, philosophy of communication. In other words, using video games as a communication medium to ask some of these big questions in life, right? And so these questions also that you see before you outline the course and the different units, the different weeks that are on the calendar on the syllabus, and they preview the different games that we'll be talking about. So I hope that taking this class and engaging with these games can help us ask and think about some of these questions like, what is culture? What is high culture versus low culture? How do video games fit into culture in our current media landscape? How do we represent video games as a form of culture that we really value or not? And how can that make us think about what culture means to us more broadly? That's what we're going to be asking really for the first couple weeks of the class, is thinking about what is the place of video games in gaming and culture. After the first couple weeks, we're going to start diving into some of those more specific games. So the first game is going to be God of War Ragnarok, and we're going to use that game as a vehicle to explore some different themes and questions around things like parenting. How do I become a good parent? What does that mean to be a good parent? What about these questions about gender and masculinity, which have become very charged, obviously, politically and culturally, yet they remain really important questions for us to ask because gender and how we understand that deeply impacts our self-concept and how we view other people. What does toxic masculinity mean, and what would a healthy or pro-social masculinity or fatherhood look like? Again, I think video games are a really interesting way of interrogating that type of cultural question. Then we'll look at the next game, It Takes Two, which is going to be it's going to be asking questions like, what does healthy conflict resolution in relationships look like? It's a game that you have to play with another person. You cannot play It Takes Two by yourself. It demands and requires communication and collaboration. You have to have a couch co-op person to play with. Then we're going to get into maybe some of the harder, more controversial questions with some games like The Last of Us Part 2, which is going to be touching on themes of cycles of violence and revenge and forgiveness. What does forgiveness require? What does it mean to really empathize with people who are different from me? What does it mean to forgive and empathize, to forgive someone who's really wronged us? Those are really big life questions that some of these acclaimed, incredible video game narratives, I think, uniquely present us with questions to grapple with, whether we fully agree with them or not. Some of the other games that we'll be getting into near the later last weeks of the course are going to be games like Detroit Become Human, Detroit Become Human, Lies of P, and then Hollow Knight Silksong. And within those games, I think you're going to find we start asking even bigger questions about how video games make us think about things like, what does it mean to be a person? What does it mean to be a human being? How do I understand my own sort of life stance? Do I have any sort of faith or hope in the universe? Or like how do video games let us grapple with these types of questions? All right. So that was a preview of some of the big philosophical questions that we're going to be using video games to think about. So let's talk then a little bit about some of the logistics of the class. So there's 3 categories of assignments you're going to be doing in this course. 5 discussion boards, 5 reading responses, and then 2 essays. And so all of this is, of course, spread out over the 9 weeks. I will say you'll want to make sure you're consistently looking at the calendar, the course calendar. I'll show you where that is on Canvas in a second, but that's always going to have the most accurate information and deadlines for things. So you will have something due every week, but not necessarily all of these things, right? So every week you will at least have either a discussion board or a reading response. And as you'll see on the calendar, sometimes you have both. I tried to set up the calendar where if it's a week where one of those two essays is due, you don't have as much to do for these other assignments. But this course is going to be asking you to participate on the discussion boards. I don't do replies for discussion boards, by the way, or very rarely. None of them for this class do. So it's I treat the discussion board as just another space for you to answer the questions I'm going to ask you and reflect and write a little bit. You don't necessarily have to do replies to other people. And the reading responses, the reading list of all the different, and it's a mix of scholarly articles and YouTube video essays mostly. Those are all listed on the syllabus, the required reading list. There is no required textbook, and I will provide PDF copies or links to all of those different readings and videos on Canvas, so you don't have to worry about getting any of that. And then the two essays, and I'm not going to go into detail with those right now, but there's instructions for those on Canvas, and I can answer any questions y'all have about those essays over email or Canvas message, or I can make another video about that if need be. All right, so let me just for a moment show you the Canvas page and just to kind of clarify that for you. So let's come over here. Let's look. All right, so I've put my Canvas in student mode, student view. So it's a little bit different than the instructor view, but this is basically what your view should look like. So up here is where recent announcements will be. I haven't made any announcements yet, but that is where you'll find them on the home page. You'll find them on the homepage of our Canvas site. Right now, you just have two modules. So the first one, key course materials. This has the syllabus, so you'll want to make sure that you read that. It also has an about your instructor page. So this just has a little bit more information about me and my biography and background if you're interested. And I also have an extension request form here. I can talk about that a little bit. Now, for a summer class like this, I don't anticipate people needing this much, but I know that a lot of you are working or have other classes. And so I don't accept late work. So I do not accept late work. That's part of my course policy. However, if you do end up needing more time, specifically, I'm thinking on the two essays, since those are the biggest assignments. If you did, you can download and fill out this extension request form and send it to me. And basically, as long as you do this 24 hours before the deadline of the respective assignment, I'll give you a little bit of extra time, right? So if the essay is due at 11:59 p.m. on a Sunday, you need to email me at least by 11:59 p.m. Saturday, the day before, for me to consider granting that request for a little bit more time. And so you can read the instructions on that. It's basically just asking you to tell me what the assignment is, what extra time you would like to request, and then why. Otherwise, Canvas is just going to have weekly modules. I'm calling it level 1 instead of week 1. So each module represents a different week. This is a 9-week class, so you'll have 9 modules, and I just called it levels because it's a games class, and I was just trying to have a little fun with it. But everything you'll need for each week will be in the modules, including instructions for major assignments, any sort of required readings or articles or videos for that week, and then all the other assignments and whatnot. And then otherwise, like I said, your syllabus is right here. You can also find the syllabus on this tab over here. All right. Well, let me come back over here for just a minute. Slideshow. Slide. All right, so I hope in this presentation I gave you a clear overview of this class, and hopefully it piqued your interest a little bit. Please reach out to me at any time this summer if you have questions about anything, a question about any of the assignments, a question about any of the games you're going to read about, or any of the scholarly articles. You can email me at Wisnewski-Parks at wcu.edu. And thanks for watching. Have a great summer.